This video introduces you to the infrared neurofeedback application's audio feedback capabilities. Using audio feedback allows you to train without looking at the screen. So for example, you could have your eyes closed, as in meditation practice, or you could train in the context of some cognitive activity such as reading. There are three kinds of audio feedback: tone, MIDI, and threshold. The controls are found at the bottom of the application's window. Threshold-based feedback involves configuring the threshold using these controls. First, we'll cover tone feedback. This button activates a tone whose pitch varies with infrared temperature. The pitch varies over a fixed range, that is, there's a maximum and minimum pitch. You can select the temperature range which corresponds to this pitch range using this control. Using a lower range gives you more sensitive feedback, so smaller changes are exaggerated. Tone feedback has an auto-center feature, analogous to some of the graphical displays, meaning that when the pitch reaches either its maximum or its minimum, the current temperature is recalibrated to the middle of the pitch range. The temperature is averaged to make the variation smoother. You can set the level of averaging using this control. This slider controls the volume of tone feedback, but of course your computer's master volume setting also affects the tone volume. Let's move on to MIDI feedback. It works pretty much the same way. You turn it on using this button and change the volume using this slider. It plays a piano note repeatedly whose pitch varies with infrared temperature. As with tone feedback, there's a fixed pitch range, and you can set the temperature range that it corresponds to using this control. MIDI feedback also works in auto-center mode, so when the pitch reaches either its maximum or its minimum, the current temperature is recalibrated to the middle of the pitch range. The same level of averaging or smoothing that you use with tone feedback also applies to MIDI feedback. Threshold feedback is more versatile and will take a little more time to explain. Firstly, you activate it with this button and control its volume with this slider. The idea of this feedback is that whenever the infrared signal crosses a threshold, a sound is triggered. By default it's a bell sound, but you could set up a different sound. See the user guide for details of how to do that. The threshold itself is set using these controls. In fact, the threshold is based on the rate of change of temperature rather than the temperature itself. That means that, for example, you can set the bell to ring whenever the temperature starts to fall. The graph here is the same as what you see at the right-hand side of the rate of change display in the upper right corner of the application. Green means increasing temperature, red means falling. This bar controls the actual limit of the threshold. You can drag it with your mouse to change it. You can set the feedback to sound either when the signal goes above the limit or below it. I think most typically you want to set it to below, so that the feedback warns you when the temperature is falling. Use this control to set the condition. In my example, you'd set the bar at around 0. You can set a sort of delay on the feedback using this control. If I set it to say 2 seconds, that means that the signal must stay below threshold for 2 seconds before the sound comes in. If it crosses the threshold and then goes back again before the 2 seconds is up, then no feedback will sound. This feature allows you to filter out changes of short duration, which you may regard as not really significant. This range control works in exactly the same way as the sensitivity control in the rate of change display.